What just happened to all of you? It's about to get worse.
Joanna, we know you've spoken with the baptizer.
John, something's happening. John, there's a plot. They're going to kill you.
From the moment Jonathan Roumie first appeared on screen as Jesus in The Chosen, something shifted, not just in the show, but in us, the audience. His portrayal wasn't loud or flashy. It wasn't performative. It was real, gentle, deeply human, and unmistakably divine. He didn't just play Jesus, he embodied him. And for millions of people around the world, he became the face of something greater. That's why the news of his departure feels more like a personal loss than just a casting update. Jonathan didn't just bring Jesus to life. He carried the entire weight of that role with grace, humility, and a rare emotional depth. He was never just an actor in this series, he was the foundation it was built upon. So when rumors began swirling about him stepping back, fans immediately feared the worst. But now, it's no longer a rumor. Jonathan Roumie is preparing to say goodbye, but why? Why would someone who has poured years of his life into a role so spiritually significant, who has publicly shared how playing Jesus transformed him, choose to walk away now, especially with The Chosen still moving toward its climax? The answer is both heartbreaking and painfully human. Jonathan has opened up about the toll this role has taken on him. Playing Jesus isn't just a job, it's a calling. And while it's been a profound honor for him, it's also been emotionally exhausting. With each new season, the intensity of the story grows. From the early days of miracles and hope, the narrative is now entering darker, more gut-wrenching territory. Season 5 leads directly into the betrayal, the arrest, the crucifixion, and Jonathan has to carry all of it. Not just the words, not just the emotion, but the spirit of it all. It's a burden no one else truly understands. And Dallas Jenkins, the show's creator, knows that too. In a recent announcement, Jenkins hinted at what's to come not just for The Chosen, but for Jonathan himself. While the show still plans to run its full 7-season arc, Jonathan's on-screen presence will not continue beyond the original series. Jenkins confirmed that Jesus, as portrayed by Jonathan, will no longer appear in future spin-offs or live-action projects after Season 7. There will be no surprise cameos, no extended appearances. The man we've come to associate so closely with the role will quietly, respectfully fade from the screen. And even though Jonathan is expected to lend his voice to future animated projects, the powerful visual presence we've known will be gone. This is not just a production decision, it's a necessary step for Jonathan's mental and emotional well-being. Imagine carrying the world's expectations on your shoulders while portraying the most iconic figure in human history. Imagine diving into scenes that depict betrayal, abandonment, brutal suffering, and death over and over again. That kind of emotional work leaves scars, even on the strongest performers. And Jonathan, as devoted as he is still human. He's shared in interviews how deeply the role affects him, how every line and every scene lives in his heart long after filming ends. And now, with the most painful parts of Jesus' story ahead, he's facing his greatest challenge yet, not just as an actor, but as a person of faith. But here's where it gets even harder to accept. Jonathan's departure doesn't just affect The Chosen, it transforms it. Can The Chosen survive without him? Can we, the viewers, still feel the same connection if the man who brought that spirit to life is no longer part of the journey? The bond between Jonathan and the audience is not something that can be recast. It's something sacred, built over years of trust and emotional storytelling. His eyes, his voice, his quiet strength, they've become the visual language of the show. And while the story of Jesus must eventually end with the crucifixion, it's hard to imagine the universe continuing without even the possibility of his return. And yet, this is the reality we must prepare for. The Chosen will go on. The narrative will unfold. Judas will betray, the disciples will scatter, the cross will rise. And Jonathan Roumie will give everything he has left to make those final moments count. But after that, he steps away. Not because he wants to, but because he has to. For his health, for his spirit, for his future. Now that the announcement is public, the clock has started ticking. We know how many seasons are left. We know when the goodbye will come. And all we can do is brace ourselves for the story, for the heartbreak, and for the moment when Jonathan Roumie disappears from The Chosen forever. Asterisk. It's easy to forget that behind the calm, compassionate eyes of Jesus in The Chosen is a man navigating immense internal pressure. Jonathan Roumie didn't just act, he transformed. From the very beginning, stepping into the role of Jesus wasn't a performance for him, it was a surrender. a spiritual, emotional, and psychological surrender that demanded everything he had. Fans see the finished product, the miracles, the sermons, the gentleness, the wisdom. But what we don't always see is the cost. And for Jonathan, that cost kept rising with each season. He wasn't just memorizing lines or hitting marks on camera. He was carrying the weight of portraying the most sacred figure in human history in a way that had never been done before, with intimacy, depth, and humanity. Unlike other portrayals that kept Jesus distant and unreachable, Jonathan's performance pulled him into our hearts. And with that intimacy came an unbearable expectation, not just from the production team or his fellow cast members, but from millions of fans around the world who saw in Jonathan's face something they'd always prayed for, a version of Jesus who felt real. The spiritual burden of that is immense. Imagine waking up each day knowing that your performance doesn't just entertain, it heals, inspires, and even defines people's faith. For many fans, Jonathan is Jesus, not just a depiction of him, but a vessel of something holy. That kind of pressure can crush a person from the inside, and Jonathan has been open about the strain it puts on his mental health. As the series moved from the early seasons of joy and community into the dark, harrowing road toward the crucifixion, the emotional weight of the role grew unbearable. Season 4 took us into deep betrayal, loss, and conflict. But Season 5, this is where it all breaks. This is the season where Jesus is handed over, where those closest to him abandon him, where Judas, who was loved and trusted, makes his fatal choice. And Jonathan has to live every second of that betrayal, not once, but over and over again, in rehearsals, in filming, in reshoots, and in press. He has to become Jesus in agony, in fear, in heartbreak. This isn't just emotional work. It's spiritual warfare. Jonathan once said in an interview that after filming certain scenes, he would go home in silence. No music, no talking, just stillness. Because the pain he carried from the scenes clung to him. The emotions didn't wash off with makeup or costumes. They stayed. That's how deeply he immersed himself. And now that the crucifixion storyline is approaching, Jonathan is standing on the edge of the hardest work of his life. Not because the role is technically difficult, but because it demands a piece of his soul. He's not just portraying the death of Jesus, he's feeling it. And Jenkins, aware of this, is doing everything he can to support Jonathan's well-being. That's why, in his recent announcement, he made it clear, Jonathan will not continue beyond Season 7 in any live-action form. His time in the flesh, as the cornerstone of The Chosen, will end with the cross. And yet, the loss feels too heavy. Because Jonathan isn't just leaving a role, he's leaving a legacy. For fans, the news hit hard. Social media is flooded with comments of sadness, disbelief, and even denial. People asking, why now? Can't he just finish the story? What will the show become without him? But the truth is, he is finishing the story, just not the way many hoped. There won't be extra seasons, no last-minute resurrections of the character. Once Season 7 ends, Jonathan's journey ends too. And while he'll voice animated versions of Jesus for side projects like The Chosen Adventures, it won't be the same. His face, his expressions, his stillness, all of that will live in our memories, not in new episodes. Some fans have speculated whether this decision was truly Jonathan's or if it was driven by the pressures of production, scheduling, or even controversy. But those close to the show say otherwise. This is about preservation, about protecting a man who has given everything and who deserves peace after walking this long, painful road. Jenkins has made it clear that this exit is about honoring Jonathan's contribution, not erasing it. That's why the Chosen team is planning to center Seasons 6 and 7 heavily around the emotional climax of Jesus' journey. So Jonathan's final moments on screen are powerful, meaningful, and unforgettable. The looming question now is, what happens after? For Jonathan, the future is uncertain and also filled with promise. He's gained massive recognition through The Chosen, but fame wasn't what he was looking for. What he found instead was a deeper connection to his own faith and to a global community that embraced him with open arms. But stepping out of the shadow of Jesus won't be easy. Every role he takes next will come with comparison. Every public appearance will still carry the expectation of holiness. Will fans allow him to be someone else? Or will the image of Jesus follow him forever? These are the emotional and psychological threads being pulled now as Jonathan prepares his exit. But more than anything, This moment is a reminder of how deeply art can affect the artist. When someone gives themselves so completely to a role, especially one this sacred, there is always a cost. Jonathan has paid that cost for years, silently, humbly, without complaint. And now, he's choosing healing. He's choosing rest. He's choosing to step away while still preserving the sacredness of the story. And we, the audience, have to let him go. Not because we want to, but because we respect him too much to ask for more than he can give. The thought alone sends a chill through fans who've walked this journey since season 1, The Chosen, without Jonathan Roumie. No gentle voice calling the disciples. No soft, piercing gaze that says everything before a single word is spoken. No more moments of quiet power as he heals, forgives, weeps, and teaches. And yet, that's the future we're heading toward. As the show marches closer to its final seasons, we're being asked to imagine something we never thought we'd have to: a chosen universe, where the centerpiece has stepped off the stage. It's more than just losing a character. It's like watching the soul of the series slip away, because Jonathan wasn't just the star, he was the beating heart of every episode. And now, that heart is preparing for its final, painful beats. Many fans are still in denial. Some hold on to hope that Jonathan might change his mind. Others look ahead to the animation projects and say, at least we'll still have his voice. But deep down, everyone knows it's not the same. The connection we felt through the screen wasn't just vocal, it was visual, physical, emotional. Every tilt of his head, every silent pause before speaking, every tear that welled in his eyes, it all felt sacred. And even though the show's writing, cinematography, and music are powerful, it was Jonathan who held it all together. And once he's gone, The Chosen will have to face a challenge it has never faced before: rebuilding itself without its cornerstone. Dallas Jenkins has been preparing for this. In interviews and live streams, he's gently laid the groundwork for what's ahead. Season 6 will dive into Jesus' final teachings and confrontations, leading right into the betrayal. And Season 7, the final season, will be where it all ends. The crucifixion, the resurrection, the final goodbye. It's no accident that Jonathan's departure aligns with the show's natural ending point. Jenkins and his team understand the emotional bond fans have with Jonathan. They're not trying to stretch things out or drag the story beyond what it can hold. Instead, they're crafting a farewell that honors what Jonathan has given, a finale that gives him space to breathe life into Jesus one last time, and then step away with dignity. But that still leaves a void. Because even when the original series ends, the Chosen universe isn't going away. There are spin-offs in development, shows based on Moses, King David, possibly even Paul. There are children's animated projects, side stories, and a growing global fanbase eager for more content. But none of those stories, no matter how well made, will have Jonathan at the center. And that absence will be felt. It's not about replacing him. That's impossible. It's about redefining the show's identity without him. And that's a terrifying thought for many fans. Because it wasn't just what Jonathan did on screen, it was how he made us feel. How he made Jesus feel real, close, human, and losing that connection, even for good reasons, will change The Chosen forever. The producers know this. They understand that Jonathan's departure could alienate some viewers. That's why they're being intentional about how they write his final arc. They want it to matter. They want it to hurt. Not because they enjoy watching fans cry, but because pain is part of the story. The crucifixion isn't supposed to be easy to watch. It's supposed to devastate us. And Jonathan's final scenes will do just that. When he stumbles under the weight of the cross, when he looks into Peter's eyes one last time, when he forgives from the cross while surrounded by hate, those moments will be etched into the hearts of every viewer. And then, silence, the silence of grief, the silence of absence. That's what The Chosen will face next. And it won't be easy. Some fans have asked if the show will explore post-resurrection appearances, Jesus appearing to the disciples, walking with them, breaking bread. The answer is yes, but only within the boundaries of the original series. Jonathan will film those scenes. But after that, his part is over. Any future spiritual themes, visitations, or divine appearances in spin-offs will not include him in live action. His journey ends with the resurrection. And in a way, that's poetic. Because Jesus' time on earth was never meant to be permanent. He came, he loved, he suffered, he rose, and then he left. Jonathan's arc mirrors that. A finite, powerful journey that leaves behind a legacy. But legacies are heavy things to carry. And the rest of the Chosen cast now has the impossible task of stepping into a story without its guiding light. How will the disciples grow and change in Jonathan's absence? How will the themes of faith, doubt, grief, and purpose be explored without Jesus' physical presence? These are the questions Season 7 will wrestle with. The emotional aftermath of the crucifixion will not be swept under the rug. The characters will feel the loss, and so will we. And that's exactly what Dallas Jenkins wants. Because The Chosen has always been about more than just Jesus' miracles. It's about how his presence changes people, and how his absence forces them to choose who they will become. Jonathan's final scenes will be his most powerful, the performance of a lifetime. And then he will walk away, not out of defeat, but because his mission is complete. And that's the hardest part of all. Knowing that this goodbye is necessary, knowing that it honors the story, knowing that it's what Jonathan needs, and still not being ready. When we watch The Chosen, we see a man full of compassion, wisdom, and peace. We see Jesus speaking truth with gentleness, healing with a touch, and weeping with those who grieve. But what we don't see is the man behind the scenes, Roumie, who quietly carries the crushing emotional weight of portraying the most beloved, revered, and misunderstood figure in human history. What he brings to the role isn't just performance, it's sacrifice. And now, as The Chosen nears its most painful chapters, Jonathan's sacrifice has reached its limit. The emotional and spiritual toll has become so intense that stepping away is not a choice, it's a necessity. It's hard for fans to grasp this. We see the brilliance of his work, we feel his presence, but we don't always realize the deep, invisible wounds left behind when a person pours so much of their soul into something sacred. Jonathan has said in past interviews that portraying Jesus has been the greatest honor of his life, also the hardest thing he's ever done. Think about what that really means. Every day on set, he has to walk in the footsteps of a man who loved perfectly, forgave endlessly, and suffered brutally. And Jonathan doesn't take this lightly. He prays before his scenes, he fasts during production, he often isolates himself to stay spiritually connected to the gravity of the role. When Jesus heals the leper or raises the dead, Jonathan isn't just acting, he's channeling deep empathy and emotional truth. And when Jesus suffers, Jonathan suffers too. Season 5, which covers Jesus' arrest and crucifixion, demands more emotional intensity than any season before. The betrayal by Judas, the abandonment by friends, the weight of sacrifice, it all falls on Jonathan's shoulders. And with it comes exhaustion, not just physical, but spiritual. When your role requires you to embody pain, suffering, and rejection on a daily basis, you eventually start to feel those wounds as your own. Even before the crucifixion scenes are filmed, the anxiety and anticipation of what's to come already weigh heavily on Jonathan. The long hours on set, the immense pressure to get it right, and the emotional turmoil of playing a man being broken in front of the world. It's more than any actor should be asked to endure. And yet, he continues, because he knows what it means to people. He knows that his portrayal is helping viewers reconnect with their faith, heal their pain, and see Jesus in a way they never have before. But that level of impact doesn't come without cost. And as we draw closer to the darkest days of Jesus' journey, the cracks in Jonathan's spirit are starting to show. Not in his performance, but in his quiet honesty. In interviews, he's more introspective. He speaks less of the role and more of its effect on him. And Dallas Jenkins has noticed too. That's why Jenkins made the announcement. Not to create shock or stir controversy, but to protect the man who has given everything. Dallas knows what Jonathan has sacrificed. He's seen the tears after a difficult scene. He's heard the silence that follows filming moments of intense heartbreak. And as a director and a friend, he made the decision to let Jonathan go when the time was right. Not mid-story, not abruptly, but gently after the original arc has been completed. There won't be an extended farewell. There won't be additional seasons or what-if storylines. The plan is simple. Jonathan finishes the story of Jesus as written. He gives us one final soul-shaking performance. And then he rests. The production team understands the weight of this moment. That's why the final seasons of The Chosen are being written with such care. They're not just scripting events, they're crafting legacy. Every line Jonathan speaks now, every miracle he performs, every interaction with the disciples is part of a long goodbye. And that's what makes it so emotional to watch. Because we know the end is coming. We know each scene could be his last. And yet, Jonathan never phones it in. If anything, his performance is growing deeper, more human, more vulnerable. He's pouring what's left of himself into the Roland. It shows the tired eyes, the moments of stillness, the lingering looks at his disciples. It all feels heavier now, more final, because it is. This level of dedication is rare. In most shows, actors come and go. Roles are passed on, characters are written off, but not here. Jonathan has become synonymous with the chosen. His presence isn't just a part of the show, is the show. And so, his departure is not just about casting, it's about identity, about legacy, about how deeply we've all connected to one man's portrayal of divine love and suffering. And that's what makes this so heartbreaking. We're not just saying goodbye to an actor, we're saying goodbye to a part of ourselves. The part that believed again, the part that hoped, the part that saw God through the eyes of Jonathan Roumie. There's also the very real question of how Jonathan himself will recover from this after years of immersing himself in one of the most emotionally demanding roles imaginable. Where does he go from here? How does he reclaim his identity outside of Jesus? Will the world let him move on? Or will he always be tied to this role, no matter what he does next? These are the haunting questions that linger as he prepares for his exit. And they're questions Jonathan is likely asking himself, too. Fame is fickle. Hollywood is unpredictable. But Jonathan's impact, his legacy will endure. Still, he will need time. Time to rest, time to heal, time to process the journey he's been on. Because even though The Chosen is scripted, the emotions it awakens are real. And for Jonathan, every scene, every line, every tear was deeply felt. It changed him. It broke him. And ultimately, it saved him. That's the paradox of playing Jesus. You give everything and somehow, in losing yourself, you find something deeper, something sacred. As fans, we owe Jonathan more than applause. We owe him gratitude for his sacrifice, for his honesty, for his willingness to carry the heaviest emotional burden on behalf of a story that matters so deeply to so many. When season 7 ends, we won't just be mourning the crucifixion. We'll be mourning the exit of a man who gave us Jesus in a way no one else ever has, and we'll carry that gift with us, always.